Hello again. Welcome to the last section for this week. Promise we're not going to throw any new code at you right now. Basically, I already talked about error messages a little bit in one of the earlier videos, but I want to go back and just show you some other errors that you might get and get a little more in depth into what the different messages might mean. Just so you have a sense of and what to do if you get an error message. It's not the end of the world if you do. They can be frustrating, but you learn every time you get an error message. So, first of all, basically, what is an error message? Error messages pop up when the computer receives instructions it does not understand, which, as you're probably learning, is more often than not. Computers have to be told exactly what to do, and they're not good at figuring out what you meant to type. So Python tries to tell you what the problem is, but it doesn't always get it right, but it'll probably point you in the right direction. So one of the things you're going to get, and I talked about these a lot in the previous lecture, was syntax errors. So these are errors caused by forgetting a syntactic element of the code. By syntactic element, I mean just the shape the code takes. So if you forget to open or close parentheses, forget to open or close quotes, forgetting the plus sign when trying to build strings. I didn't actually talk about this, but if you do any kind of Googling about strings in Python, you'll see it. So if you want to print things on the same line, you have to, one of the ways to do that is to say print and then like the string, for example, hello, and then a plus sign and then name, or whatever variable it is that you want to print. So if you try and do hello and then name without a plus sign there, you'll get a syntax error. So if you do want to print, a string and a variable, or two variables and a string and a variable and a string and a variable, all kinds of things, you just put a plus sign in between each of those. But if at any point you forget a plus sign, you will get a syntax error. If you forget the comma between the numbers, for example, using goto or something like that, so if you try and go to 0 space 0, that will not work because Python has to know that you want to go to 0, 0. But yeah, Python's not smart enough to know, like, oh, of course they meant 0, 0. It's just gonna I'm looking for a comma, I'm not getting a comma, you need to give me a comma. But what it'll say is not that useful, it'll say syntax error on line 18. So you need to go find line 18, which will show up in your idle editor. If you look at the bottom bar, you'll see line and column numbers, so you can just use that to figure out what line number the error is actually for. So that's a syntax error. Something where the program is not formatted in the way that Python thinks it's going to be. Another thing that you might get is a name error. I should note that syntax errors will probably show up as like an alert pop-up kind of thing, like the EOL error or syntax error, that'll show up as a pop-up. Something like a name error is going to show up in the window, the shell window, that is where you go back to type stuff. So if you're running the Turtle graphics program and the Turtle kind of stops and you're not sure why, make sure to go back to that shell window because chances are good that's where the error message actually is. It won't show up with your Turtle, it'll show up in the shell. It's a little annoying, but hey, you get a turtle out of it, so. So you will get a name error if you do something like using a variable or a library that doesn't exist. So if you forget to import turtle at the top of your code and then you try and say Tibby equals turtle, you're going to get a name error because Python's not going to know what turtle is. If you name a variable and then spell it differently later, this happens all the time. If this happens to you, do not be ashamed. It is so common. The first time you spell it Tibby with a lowercase, but then later on you call it uppercase, or you forget one of the B's, or you call it Tippy all of a sudden because why not? You'll get a name error, and you'll be looking at this and you're like, what do you mean? Of course Tibby exists. Of course I created it. And then you realize, oh, but that one had a lowercase t and this one doesn't. So those are the kinds of things to look out for if you get that. Misspelling built-in Python functions. Try to use a variable before you create it. And this is another thing that is so common because it is a little hard to internalize that programs start at the top and then just go in the order of the code. So you can't do something like, say, print name, and then after that ask the user what their name is. They have to go in the other order. First, you have to find their name, then you can print their name. And it probably sounds obvious when I'm saying it like this, but it is one of those things that people will tend to forget when they're first learning how to code. The next thing you can get is something called an attribute error. You probably won't see this too much unless you basically misspell things. So all the things, if you try and do tibby.print, that's not going to work because, like I said, turtles can't print, they can write. So you have to do tibby.write. But if you spell write wrong, or you say, tibby.backward and you forget a letter in backward, you'll probably get an attribute error. So just be aware that that means there's something wrong with the little bit of information between the period and the parentheses. It's called a function name, don't worry about that. But if you see attribute error, look for a period and the parentheses and look at whatever you have in between those, and that's probably you misspelled something or you're using the wrong name. If you do get an error message, and you will, it's just part of programming. It's fine. So let me say, when you get an error message, don't panic. It's not a big deal. You can fix this. Read the error message. So many people just say, oh, there's something wrong, and then go back and just start messing around with their code, and it's like, just look at the message. See if it's one of the ones that I told you about. If it's not, Google it. Why not? I don't know. Google exists. And if that doesn't help, all right. Check the code that you added most recently and just look at it really carefully. Make sure that the variable names are spelled the way you've been spelling them. Make sure all the parentheses are closed, all the quotes are closed. The stuff like that. That is key, but also it's so easy to miss, right? And so you just look at it carefully. If you can't find anything wrong, and the error message doesn't make any sense, one thing that you can do is comment out all of the code. So put a hashtag in front of each of the lines of code. It's tedious, but it works. And then starting at the top, just uncomment, so remove the hashtag from the first line. Save it, run it. Does that work? Great. Uncomment the next line. Save it, run it. Does that work? Cool. Keep going until you get to the line where when you uncomment it, it doesn't work anymore. And you say, all right, I have found the line that has the mistake in it. And that will really help you identify where the error is. If you still can't figure it out, or that seems like too much work and you don't want to do it, and you're driving yourself crazy, the first thing to do is take a break. I'm being very serious right now. It is so helpful to walk away from your code for a little bit, and you will find this with HTML and CSS also if you haven't already. Things will not work, and they won't work, and you can't figure out why they won't work, and then if you leave for 15 minutes, or overnight, whatever, I don't know your schedule, and then come back, a lot of the time you'll say, oh, I can't believe I missed that. And this has actually happened to me, and I still counsel students to do this, take a nap. If it's really frustrating, you really can't figure out what's going on, lie down for a little bit. Your brain's going to keep working on these problems, and, a lot of times you'll wake up and you'll say, I know what to do. Or at least I have an idea of what to try next, which, is just as good. But, seriously, don't panic. Give it a shot. And if you really find yourself, you're just struggling and it's been like half an hour, 45 minutes, well, first take a break. Come back, and if that doesn't work, do ask for help. All right, don't just sit there forever and say, oh my god, this is never going to work, and I'm an idiot and I can't do this. You absolutely can, but sometimes it really does help to have a fresh pair of eyes, so feel free to ask your instructor. And yeah, so programming can be frustrating, I'm not gonna lie, but it is so satisfying when you get it to work and it does what you want it to do, and that's what keeps a lot of people coming back to it. And so I really hope that you can find the joy in this, and have some fun with it, and be like, yeah, okay, I got it. I am programming. I can make a computer do things that it otherwise would not be doing. Because that's a really cool feeling. So I hope you can have some fun with that. Have some fun with this week's homework assignment. And, enjoy. And next time we'll do some more advanced Python, and that'll be fun too. So, bye.